Mustafa Gulan and B. Rowan, who are going to be presenting on lime stabilized soil for low-cost flood resilient housing.
Okay, yes. Thank you. Okay, I'll just kick off and I will bring in B in just a second. So there we go. Yeah, this should work. All right. So I just wanted to talk a little bit first about the context of this. Lime stabilized soil or soil construction in particular. So we are talking about it in areas where it's flood risk. You could say hurricane, heavy monsoon, but those kind of extreme weather events rather than earthquake resilient construction, where there's definitely a place for it. But this talk, we are talking about more flood and water resilience in earth construction. Same, referring back to Seb's map, think about those parts of Asia, Africa, and Latin America. So the same application right across those. We will be focusing on a Pakistan or southern Pakistan case study because of the massive amounts of flooding happened there in the early 2010s, first 5 years of 2010s. Oh, somebody, have you just let somebody else in? You got me twice. Okay.
I'm back.
All right. Yeah, you're back. Good. So we'll go to the next slide. So that's context, what it is and what it isn't. So just want to talk here a little bit. This is 3 years of mapping that the shelter cluster put together over 2010, which was all the areas in blue and red and brown. 20 million people affected, so 2 million damaged houses. Yeah, that's a lot, right? And then the huge response happened there. At the time, it was the biggest humanitarian response in the world. Then in 2011, after everybody had sort of finished their response in shelter around here, then there was massive floods in the blue area. 750,000 houses done. Multiplied by 7, number of people per household, gives you a sense. I think it's like 5, 7, 6 million people homeless. It's mind-boggling numbers, right? So that's the scale. And then that was 40 days rain. And older people we spoke to around the time said we have never experienced this. You know, at that time it was September. It never happens like that. 40 days straight rain. Then in 2012, 7 days rain, what you could call a cloud outburst event. So very much a climate change, odd, what do they call it? Extreme climate events or whatever. So this is sort of connecting us back to that climate change situation. So we're going to talk about that, and I'll just have a look. You know, scale of the flooding like this everywhere for miles. So Sindh has 50 million people. It's about half the size of Italy in length, 800 kilometers, and it's pretty flat. So when there's water like this, it goes for hundreds of kilometers. And you see, that was how it looked. This is so people in that, and their animals and their shelters. You can see they didn't have shelters there. Now, what we'll talk about real quick is that it affected many types of construction. Even the brick and mortar ones that were done like this were also damaged and fell apart. The traditional earth-filled type shelters, very thick walls, but you'll see a lot of them collapsing from the roof down because of poor roof design, not having any eaves over the top of the walls. So the water gets into the top of the wall and erodes where there is where there were beams here sitting right on top, and of course it gets wet underneath, the roof collapses, but also these are not stabilized, so in many cases the bottoms of the walls or the foundations collapse too. So B, over to you to talk about in that context what we were trying to do in lime stabilized soil work. Over to you, B.
Okay, thanks, Magnus. Hello, everyone. Yeah, so those are the conditions into which Magnus invited us to come and help with lime use. And that kind of evolved into the most amazing programs, actually, using what we call lime stabilized soil. My slang for that would be magic mud, because you can stabilize local earth if it has some kind of clay content as in stopping it dissolving in water, sitting underwater, which clearly has been a major problem across this flood incident in southern Pakistan to a humongous degree, massive, massive scale. And what happened, I mean, on the left there, you can see a very typical single-story house, which is a Hands design. Hands is a in-country NGO, a very big NGO, and they have actually, I will flag this up now, a very fantastic model of working with villages. So in terms of sustainability, it might be worth looking at their model. But you can see it's on average around about $250 a house, as opposed to much, much more expensive brick or concrete block and cement mortar houses. So they're using local traditional skills in terms of earth plastering, earth block, earth whatever, but making the mix stable through a series of simple field tests. Do you want to click on? I don't think I can do it from here, Magnus.
No, I'll click on, right?
Yeah,
So,
so just very quickly to introduce the fact that this is not new technology. There's a lot, you know, lime has been, obviously the durability of lime is well documented for going back thousands of years. We've got the Alhambra, the fortress walls there, Venice, and lots of canal linings over here. Roman baths, they learned how to use what we call non-hydraulic lime to make a hydraulic mix, which is actually very similar to what we would be doing on the ground in villages. All water holding, quite, you know, this is very simple technology, but with a massive proven track record. Okay.
Yeah, I would say the evidence is strong on that one.
Definitely. And wherever we work, it's really useful, both motivationally for people, but also, you know, ethically, really, to call on the heritage use of lime in that region, that country, make it as local as possible. We were able to call on a lot of examples in Sindh. Many of the shrines were used with lime. They were the last things left standing in flood. Everything else fell, you know, came down. The Succa barrage, very, very famous internationally, actually, the Sindh, and that was lime stabilized soil mortars. And they've been underwater in that humongously marvelous, huge swell of water through fast runs, everything. It's lime stabilized mortars since 1926. So there's wonderful local examples, again, that we can call on. It's just finding those and, you know, rediscovering them really and revitalizing them and giving that knowledge to, and the technology to villagers, to local people, so they can absolutely claim, quite rightly so, you know, a heritage ownership. It's what their grandfathers, their grandmothers would have used, or beyond that. Okay.
Okay, moved on here to local supply chain, and just I was going to say, this was part of the issue we've been talking about in bamboo and other materials, you know, the challenge of the supply chain, and in Pakistan in particular, the difficulty of getting good quality, high quantities of good bamboo. So I want to say that when B came with Stafford, the other consultant, we were looking at where the supply chain might come from lime, and we visited together these lime kilns that you can see in the top right. There's those, and he's holding some of the burnt lime there, and these are the kilns on the bottom right. So, B, do you want to say anything else about what was the quality of the lime coming out of these local supply kilns?
Yeah. I mean, just to say, at the top right gives you an idea. It's all incredibly local materials, and the guy at the bottom, he's holding a rock of limestone, and then he's holding it a similar size that's been burnt, and that, you know, that's 2,000-year-old technology going on right there, top hand, right hand corner, local biomass fuel. Now the quality was absolutely fantastic, really, really pure, high quality. And wherever lime is burnt, usually if it's burnt well, you can expect really high quality. And there's very simple tests, very simple field tests that people learn to do very quickly to establish that quality.
Okay. I'm going to move on.
Yep.
Time. So what I thought was really interesting here was that when B and Hans, and I mean all the actors involved in this reconstruction process, we were looking at improved vernacular design. Like, we weren't trying to do, if you remember in the early pictures, you saw those brick buildings that had collapsed in the water, in the rain. They didn't all collapse, but they cost between $1,000 and $1,500 because of the number of fired bricks needed, the sand you had to import, and the cement you needed to make a cement-based mortar, right? So just the amount of money and high quality training you would need was not always local to those villages. If you look at this house, I'm looking at the roundhouse here, in the southeast of Sindh, very particular designs there. In many other parts of Sindh, these and Punjab, this kind of mud brick, adobe brick, is you just take some mud, put it into a shape, leave it in the sun-dried brick. It's an adobe wall, boom, and you've got your little single room shelter. There's different types of them, but those are generally how people have built for a long time. So it's a local traditional design. So when we tried not to change that too much, except this the roof thing of not having roof eaves. We knew that if we didn't extend that design a bit, whatever you did with the improvement of the quality of the stabilized brick, you're always going to have a destroyed roof, walls, because it didn't have, the rain wasn't getting projected out beyond the top of the wall. B, anything else on that slide?
Yeah, that's great. Just to draw your attention, really, for those who haven't really heard of lime stabilized soil, the mix, when tested, can be used for almost every element of that building, the foundations, the walls, blocks, mortars, everything. So it is stable and does not dissolve underwater. And we do some simple tests to ensure that it is the right recipe, so to speak, and people can step into confidence with their material before they build, because they can see it sitting in buckets and touch it and feel it and compare that to a mud block that dissolves. So you can see this is just taken
a picture now of the lime in buckets. So which were taken from this. So this was the straw builds training, I guess. So they're looking at these pictures of the blocks underwater.
Let me just tell you the top right-hand one, Magnus. The top right-hand one picture with all those discs and bottom of flower pots instead of buckets, because we didn't have any, or blocks. They've been underwater for 3 years.
Oh, okay, 3 years. Good. So, and I think important here to say is that the team had this training going on at village level. It wasn't like in lab level in Karachi or whatever. I mean, it was going on there too, but the hands team would train the trainers to do this at the village level. And when we would go there, they'd be like, look, this one, they're banging it around and saying this, they're really stuck, because they've been trying this in buckets for so many months. And then let's say if this was the one, well, this hasn't kept its smooth base, but some of them kept very much their integrity like underwater, and it said, no, we're going to use that mix to that ratio of soil and lime and maybe a bit of brick dust or something to use for all of our houses in this area, because that's the type of soil we have in this village. The next village, 10 clicks down the road or 5, might have a slightly different mix, amount of clay in the soil, and it would have changed, and they would use a slightly different ratio. I was amazed. And yeah, can we move on, B?
Yes, by all means. Yep.
We could get far too.
Okay, so
B, we've got 2 minutes. Oh my God.
okay,
We're moving on, B.
let me just point out compressive strength. Lime stabilized soil increases the strength of the mix, of the earth mix as well, phenomenally.
Very good.
Sufficient for earth seismic zones, more than. So let's go.
Yeah. Next one, looking at the Arup study. Kudos to Arup we did some evidence on this. You can refer to the report later, perhaps. Something I've jumped to the curing slide, which could be a chat. Actually, B, I'm going to jump all the way. We've only got 2 minutes left.
Okay, go for it. Yeah.
To the barriers and obstacles, which is really where we should have gotten to when we had 5 minutes left. So I think for here, B and I discussed this. We thought 4 main things here about the existing orthodoxy that most of the building professionals are trained in conventional building. And as we were saying here, in many of the big responses after earthquakes, it's led by structural engineers and some civil engineers and some architects, but mainly engineering head, and they have no idea about all the stuff B was just telling us about history of lime stabilized soils. Unfamiliarity with traditional materials, again, same, and very little evidence published. That's why Seb's talk earlier on on the bamboo side would be so important for that. Insufficient time, you were saying this, allowed by donors and programs. Definitely that's an obstacle. But we don't have enough time. We, the donors, are saying, it's emerging, you've got 6 months, boom. You said 6 months? You just got your person hired in place by then, let alone permission from the government and so on. You need 2 to 3 years. Time is definitely the thing. Government regulations also came up in our chat that, and in Cox's and so many places, the government regulations say no. And progress is sort of deemed a modern, in the first year after Pakistan response, we were told it's got to be brick and mortar or nothing. The people were like, we want to see, if we're going to get rebuilt house, we want a brick and mortar house. It has to be like the modern ones. So that was definitely an obstacle, which we overcame. Scaling up, I think in the Pakistan context, we went up, this is 210, 211. Basically, we got to 40 to 50,000 houses a year. So by the end, with this lime stabilized soil, was 110,000 houses rebuilt with that, saving $70 million that way. It was about $350 a house rather than 1,200. So we calculated, it was like, whoa, that's a lot of saving, like 50 million pounds. We would extra, we'd had to have spent. And we spent, about 25 million a year after each flood. So we invested big time. So we had the backing of London at the time, Conservative government at the time, like, wow. And they said, yeah, okay, go for it. And they supported us with massive shelter response, a huge livelihood response, and some wash response, right? It's really controversial because others would say, you shouldn't just give cash. People know what they will do. This cash-based response, right? This is on this side. They all, or whichever side, the other side. They think the best way, people know best how to do it with money. They wouldn't have known how to do it without this. And many families in that area told us that too. B, I'm running out of time. So this is B. This is your book. It's a slide about your book that you and Stafford have produced. Say something about it.
Oh, I think that, yeah, great. I mean, anybody who wants to know more about this technology, obviously, have a look at the book. And Magnus and Lauren have, I think, a few copies, real live copies that you can actually buy. So feel free. And we haven't said it, but, it's also incredibly, incredibly low carbon technology. So, well, in our view, definitely climate change adaptation and mitigation in one. It's really, we want to be doing this. We've seen it work. We want to be doing it. It really works with the local vernacular. We've seen women use it in the kitchens, outdoors, and their houses. They're redecorating them because they've refound confidence in their material. It's really, it's that good. Okay, Magnus.
Cool. Thank you, B. Sorry about the time. I think you've run over. Go ahead. Don't go anywhere because there might be questions.
Yeah, I'll stay right here. Thanks.
Thank you very much. That was really, really interesting. I think we've got time for a 1 minute question.
What?
30-second question, 30-second answer.
Oh, no.
Just picking up on the point you made there about it being low carbon, how well do we understand that full sort of environmental life cycle of lime? Because there's mineral extraction and effects on biomes from that potentially. There's the use of local materials to fire it. There's the carbon emissions from firing it. And so that entire sustainability cycle, how well do we know that? And is the fact that it's maybe less carbon emitting than other things and it's good for people, how does that then balance in with those wider impacts upon, the world?
Oh, right. We'll have to.
What do you want me to?
We found that we saved 580,000 tons of carbon dioxide as compared to cement, sand, mortar, and the emissions from cooked, fired kiln bricks. They are massive. Half a kilo per brick, I think, of CO2 per freaking brick. Plus, you got to use cement, which is hugely emission. So 508, which is the same as 180,000 return flights Edinburgh to Tokyo, if you happen to be interested. But anyway, so it is currently, but we were told earlier we're not supposed to talk about the carbon production in that, but it is, we have a pretty strong case on it, don't you think, B? And
Yeah.
I think, could you say something about how it absorbs CO2 from the atmosphere?
Yeah, that, I mean, what we're looking at here, for instance, is what we call a non-hydraulic lime. So it is a carbon neutral lime cycle in and of itself, because although it kicks out CO2, it reabsorbs that back into the building fabric as it carbonates. But you're quite right, it's the burning of the fuel that will, you know, has a footprint. And that's in places like Pakistan and rural areas, it will be local biomass, and local biomass can actually be grown as part of a regenerative program to supply and support lime burning, for instance. We are also working on solar kilns to actually step that footprint further down.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm so sorry.